Sorry, everybody, it takes me longer to walk on stage with these shoes on today. So up next, we're going to be tackling another social media topic. We're going to be talking about making the most of Twitter for car sales. Helping us with that is going to be Ross McDonald from Twitter. His career began at Disney, where he was part of the team which launched ESPN in the UK. After 6 years there, he moved to the Radio Times before carrying on to his position here at Twitter. So, Ross, if you'd like to join me on stage. No one copies me when I clap. Thank you. Thank you for being here today.
No worries.
So, if you've got any questions for Ross today, do put your hands up. We've got Jack on one side of the stage, and we've got Darren somewhere over here. They'll run over with a microphone if you've got anything you'd like to ask. But I'm just going to go in first. Do you want to just explain a bit about how your role at Twitter works?
Yeah, absolutely. So my role at Twitter is focused solely on the auto clients. I'm the auto lead at Twitter, and that basically involves working day to day with all the big sort of car manufacturers and figuring out sort of how they can best use Twitter, how it can tie into their sort of their marketing strategies, but also how they can use it from a sort of customer service point of view as well. So that could be anything from a new car launch through to trying to get more people to sign up to warranty deals. It's a real range of different things.
What is the biggest target that your clients are trying to work towards?
It really depends. For the big car brands, they're all focused on their big launches. So it's launching a new car, and it's trying to get as many people as possible to be aware of that, right? But because they're car brands, they're also very competitive. So there's a nature of one-upmanship. They want to do things that people haven't done before. And it's a really exciting sort of vertical to work on because there's always an opportunity to try new things. So sort of this year, at Twitter, we've been doing a lot around sort of live streaming, and we're just dipping our toes into sort of chatbots and stuff like this. And there's lots of really exciting things around this for car brands to get involved in. But ultimately, the bottom line is how can they use Twitter to sell more cars?
What are the opportunities at Twitter then that our delegates here today could be taking advantage of?
Yeah, so I think there's a number of opportunities. The big thing for Twitter at the moment is our live streaming place. So for those of you who perhaps aren't, big Twitter users, start using it. But if you're not, we're doing a lot around live streaming events. So we launched this in September last year with live streaming of the NFL. So you could watch free NFL football globally wherever you are around the world. This offers up really exciting opportunities for brands to be involved in those live streams and things like that. We launched it in the UK with Transfer Deadline Day. So if you're interested in football, you could watch Sky Sports News Transfer Deadline Day feed for free as a Twitter user. And obviously then we have brands who are sponsoring that, who are involved in the sort of ad breaks and the promotion of things like that as well. I think for when it comes to like car dealers and stuff like that, it's more looking at how you can use Twitter as a customer service platform. That a lot of people just use Twitter as a customer service platform. They don't tweet, they don't really sort of engage with much content. But when something goes wrong or when they want to discuss something, that's when they sort of turn to Twitter. And it's because it's such a fast-moving platform. So I think that's sort of the big opportunity is how can you use Twitter to make sure your customers are getting the best possible customer service. And I think sort of a good example of that actually isn't necessarily from a car brand, but there's a bookstore in North London called Big Green Bookstore. And for those of you who are on Twitter, I recommend you follow it. And it's based in Wood Green, which is quite a deprived area of London, and has a lot of sort of social issues. So it's quite hard running an independent bookstore in Wood Green. So they tweeted out, this is a few weeks ago now, but they tweeted out it was a Sunday evening, and they tweeted out, guys, basically, you need to start buying some books. We've got bills to pay this week. And so just a fairly innocuous sort of quirky tweet. The response on the platform was overwhelming, where within minutes of this tweet going out, they had hundreds and then thousands of responses from people on the platform being like, oh, do you know what? Actually, yeah, I'll have some books. And then a one-to-one dialogue with each of their individual customers, where customers are asking them, right, okay, have you got anything by Chaucer? Right, yeah, I have. $3.99, and there was just a really lovely use of the platform to show how you can have that dialogue and that one-to-one sort of direct contact with your customer.
Do you think in that case they knew what they were doing, or was it just in the case of the bookshop, do you think they planned that they would have that effect? Or
yeah, I think No, I don't think that was planned. If you follow their Twitter feed, it's a really good Twitter feed to follow because it's just irreverent sort of tweets about the local area, and they've done a really good job, and they're very involved in their local area, in their specific part of London. So they just tweet a lot about what's going on in the community. So this certainly wasn't anything that was pre-planned. This was just a sort of, they were literally being like, look, we're going to close down if you guys don't start buying a few more books. And so it was almost like a plea for help. But because Twitter is that sort of that direct one-to-one platform, and because it's such a fast-paced platform, it was the perfect place for them to have that, and then to have that dialogue with all their customers.
Do you think that there is, I'm not saying there's some sort of magic formula, but how should the balance be between personality and just sort of straight informing your followers?
Yeah, it's a great question, and we spend a lot of time with the big car brands talking about this. My personal viewpoint on this is that it's okay to have a personality on Twitter, that it's okay for brands to like have a bit of fun and to use the platform in a fun way. That there are situations where you just need to get information out there, and we talk a lot about the sort of 3 different types of tweets. So there's one tweet where you're giving the information straight away, and an example of that might be like, you know, an England squad announcement in the football. You're just giving the information. But for the rest of the tweets, it's okay to have a bit of fun, have a bit of personality, be funny, be quirky, be irreverent. There's nothing wrong. People sort of like brands that are a bit more fun on the platform rather than just being sort of fairly sort of stoic, just getting the information out there.
Do you guys, I don't know if you do any research into this necessarily, but is there a balance that businesses should be getting between different social media platforms with Twitter, or should it just be Twitter?
Yeah, it should just be Twitter. No, we spend a lot of time talking about this as well, and I think the brands are beginning to realise that just having a social media strategy perhaps isn't like just the smartest way of doing these sorts of things now. That if you look at a platform like Twitter, it's a very different platform to things like Facebook and Instagram. So if you think about Facebook, you know, certainly my Facebook page, it's just like, it's me on holiday and what I had for dinner last night and all this like rubbish that no one's interested in. But it's all about me. But if you think about Twitter, it's more about what's going on out there, and it's about what's going on in the world. So doing what people do on Facebook and expecting that to perform just as well on Twitter is never going to work. And vice versa, doing what works on Twitter and expecting that to work on Facebook and Instagram and Google isn't going to work either. It's actually about figuring out what are the strengths and weaknesses of the different platforms. Do they work for my particular campaign objective? And then tailoring what you do on each platform specifically to the platform, rather than just having a sort of a catch-all approach to it.
So are there any questions in the audience at this point? Oh, we've got a few. Jack, I think this... Oh, Darren. Yeah, this lady was first.
You said that there was 3 different types of tweets. You only said one. What are the other 2, please?
Sorry, could you just repeat that?
You said that there was 3 different types of tweets,
Yeah.
but you only stated one. Please could you tell me what the other 2 were?
Yeah, sure, of course. So, yeah, the first one is the fact-based tweet, where you're just going to Twitter and you're finding out, right, what is the score of the football? The second one is what we talk, it's probably a bit more relevant, is about passions, and that's where people use the platform to follow, you know, if they're into cooking, they'll follow famous chefs. They'll be looking for recipe inspiration and that sort of thing. And that's just more them keeping up to date with what's going on around their particular passion point. And the third one, we need a better name for, but internally we call it serendipity, and it's just the sort of the funny, irrelevant. It's basically like cats skateboarding and that sort of stuff. So you've got your factual tweet, you've got your passion-based tweet, and then you've just got your irreverent, funny tweets as well.
I think we had a question. Oh, okay. Anybody else at this point? Okay. Oh.
Hi, do you have any plans around lead generation and that kind of area on Twitter?
Lead generation's a big thing for us at the moment. It's, to be completely honest, it's not something we do incredibly well at the moment. We do have a number of plans that we're rolling out this year. I think from a wider point of view, last year at Twitter was certainly about getting our platform right for consumers. So it was fixing a lot of issues on the platform and making sure it was the best possible platform for consumers. This year we're a bit more focused on how brands can get involved in our brand products, and part of that will absolutely be figuring out how we do lead gen better. So it's not like we're going to make any announcements sort of next week about it, but I think certainly over the coming months we'll have some exciting products to do that better than we are currently.
Sort of on the same topic, but how with Twitter can you track customers actually making their way to the dealership? Is there any way at the moment to be able to see that?
Yeah. We work with sort of people like Ford and BMW in a number of ways, where we will have Twitter tags integrated onto their websites, and so we can sort of track the user journey and sort of figure out, did they go through the whole process? Probably not. But how far through that process did they get? And we do a lot around sort of car configurators on Twitter. So we've got lots of ad formats where users can go through and be like, specify what sort of wheels they want, what color, what model, that sort of thing. And we can track all of that on the platform so that we know that, right, this is the stage at which the user sort of stopped configuring their car and went off and did something else. We can track which users have seen which adverts and all of that. So we do have like a very long funnel of being able to track each individual stage, what the user's done. Did they go through and complete the action they were trying to do, or did they go and do something else?
Is there a particular type of Twitter user who actually will look at a car on Twitter and end up buying it?
I think like autos is one of the key passion points on Twitter, certainly. So, you know, along with the big things on Twitter are stuff like politics and sport, music and cars. And people like talking about cars on the platform. And there's a lot of conversation on the platform. Just general people tweeting about, like, have you seen the new Audi, the new Ford, the new BMW? Do people actually see an advert on Twitter and then go through and buy it in that same session? You know, to be honest, probably not. But I think it plays a part in the overall role.
And how big is brand awareness on Twitter? Like actually building your brand and your business?
Again, it varies. It varies from client to client. But I take Ford. Ford are the client I work the most with, and most of their business is branding, right? So for them, they use Twitter as a branding platform. They don't use it as a performance or a response driving platform. So a lot of the stuff we do with them is figuring out how they can align themselves with key conversations on the platform and the key events that happen in the world. So if there's a big football match, if there's a big cultural event going on, Ford will work with us on how they can be part of that conversation on the platform, basically. So they did a lot with us in the States, for example, around the NFL and being involved in the live stream there. And that becomes quite interesting, because then what you have sort of, imagine a live stream of a football match that people are watching on Twitter, and it becomes quite compelling because people are talking about the game, and then you cut to an ad break. Now, we all know that most people, when they're watching on TV, will probably then be on Twitter or Facebook seeing what people are saying about it. But when you're watching an event on Twitter, we see that the conversation changes when it cuts to an ad break. So it goes from being around the game to then it will be about, oh, like these new Adidas trainers are pretty cool. And the conversation becomes around the actual brands they're advertising within the ad break. And that's quite an interesting sort of dynamic. And it's not something we've done enough research on yet. But I think, you know, when you can have a brand like Ford who are launching a new car, and in the middle of the NFL stream on Twitter, people begin to start talking about the new car and how great it is, that's a really sort of powerful opportunity for a brand like Ford.
Is there a way that sort of at the other end of the scale, smaller dealerships can capitalise on those big events that are going on by getting involved in the conversation to try and connect with customers which work on their sort of...
Yeah, I think we look at a lot of the research on the platform, and I think it's something like 2/3 of Twitter users who we bucket up as an auto fan follow their local car dealership. So I think it's a good opportunity to try and get as many local followers as you can, and it's okay to then get involved in the conversation around these big events. Like I don't think people should feel like they haven't got anything to say, because it's just not true. And people actually like hearing from not just big brands, but also their local dealerships and the local businesses, and it builds up a bit of a community feel. So I'd absolutely encourage people to use the platform in that respect, and not to be afraid about getting involved in sort of, you know, feeling like they can't be involved in the big conversations, because they absolutely can. And it's actually just a nice way to build up that affinity with your very localized customers.
I'm chatting away, but gentleman at the front.
Hi. We're really kind of specific at work about who we're actually marketing to and who we're talking to. And obviously on Facebook, for example, you can see who, just for example, in an age group, you can see who's actually kind of communicating with you. What's the sort of, what are the most popular age groups for using Twitter, for example?
Are you talking about Twitter in general? Or?
Yeah.
So all the stats that we sort of pull, it varies from market to market actually. But if you look at the UK and US as sort of two of our big markets, it's a slightly older audience. So we're looking at sort of 18 to 44 is our most popular demographic, which is sort of as you'd expect, right? Twitter's 11 years old now. We're not Snapchat, so it's not like we've got a bunch of teenagers on the platform. But what we do have is quite a broad audience. We actually talk less about like the actual demographics, but we see our audience on Twitter as a very influential audience because we see them as the sort of people who are interested in breaking news. They're interested in knowing what's going on in the world, and we see them as an audience who are sort of the people around the dinner table who are like, oh, have you seen this happen? So we see them as this influential audience, and when you think about the nature of who you follow on Twitter, it's a mixture of your friends and family, but it's also a mixture of, movie stars, politicians, sportsmen, and so it becomes a very influential audience. So, I can certainly share with you all the statistics and stuff. We have all the demographic info that we have on our users, but I think in general we talk a lot about this influential audience on Twitter, and it's something that I firmly believe in.
Are there any other questions at this?
Sorry, Ross, you talked a lot about Ford and the new car business, and that this industry deals with 2.5 million new cars, but this industry also deals with about 8 million used cars. Do you have a focus on that, or do you have something to offer us that's slightly away from?
Yeah, I think certainly when it comes to used cars, Twitter's an opportunity for you to speak to people when they're talking about changing cars, when they're talking about getting their car serviced and stuff like that. If you think about the nature of Twitter, it's 140 character tweets, so they're very short burst bits of information. But you as a brand or a car dealership, you can target based off what people are actually talking about. So we can bucket up people who we know. For our bigger brands, for example, you'll have segments where we'll know that these users are interested in buying a new car. And I think the stats I was looking at before I came here is that I think 80% of Twitter users are looking to buy a new car within the next 3 years. So in general, it's an audience that's looking to change cars and stuff like that. And I think that the fact that you can actually target and talk to people when they're in that mindset is quite a powerful thing. And it goes back to the sort of the example I gave earlier around the bookshop, that Twitter gives you an opportunity to have a one-to-one dialogue with those customers. So once you've identified them, you can actually sort of reach out to them. All the research and all the stats that we sort of do, and all the anecdotal evidence that we get from our users, they really like it when they get good customer service. And I think the customer service thing is absolutely key, to not just sort of neglect Twitter as a platform, but to make sure that your customer service on Twitter is absolutely top notch, because that will benefit you way more than spending, to be honest, thousands of pounds on advertising. Customer service is the number one thing on the platform.
And there's a gentleman just behind with a question.
Hi Ross, just talking about personalisation and conversation and customer service, do you not think that the 140 character limit is a barrier, and is there any truth in removing it or extending the character limit?
Yeah, we get asked that a lot. You would get different answers from different people at Twitter. My personal viewpoint is I don't think it is a barrier. I think when you think about the nature of Twitter, it's an incredibly fast-moving platform. And I think once you open up that character limit, it slows the platform down. And then that takes away from the essence of what the platform is, that it's meant to be these short, sharp bursts of sort of information and comments and views and stuff like that. That said, what we are looking at is making it easier for users to do multiple tweets, so that if you do want to have, like, if you want to write a Bing log thread on Twitter, at the moment it's a little bit clunky. You have to write your tweet, then you have to write another one, and it's not a great user experience. So what we're rolling out fairly soon, actually, will be some tools to make that much easier. So if you want to say something on the platform that's going to be spread over 5, 6, 7, 8 tweets, it becomes very easy to do that. It'll just start auto-populating the next tweets. So I actually think that's a happy medium between keeping, like, ultimately what is the essence of the platform, but also making it easier for people who do want to say a bit more.
You're going to make the UX better, effectively.
Sorry, can you just...
You're going to make the UX better, the user experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a key part of a lot of the feedback we get is that if you haven't used Twitter before, it can be a little bit sort of like off-putting when you first begin to use it. It's a bit more complicated than perhaps other platforms. So I think we're just looking at ways to make it as easy as possible for people who've never used it before to actually use and to get on board. And, a lot of people use the platform and still are a little bit scared about tweeting. So we're trying to make, encourage people to tweet a bit more and to make things like that as easy as possible for them.
Have we got any other questions? Oh.
Often you find the followers that you obtain on Twitter aren't direct customers or people that are going to buy cars off you. Is there any way that you can recommend that we build our customer base via Twitter from followers rather than people that are just following us for the passion of the brand?
Did you hear that? I'm sorry, could you just repeat that?
So a lot of people find that their followers are not direct customers or people that are likely to buy a car off you. Is there anything you can recommend that's going to help us grow our customer base from followers that are going to buy cars?
Was that you find that a lot of people follow you because of the brand, not because they're going to buy a car? How can you try and capitalise on, build a customer base that will?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think if you're concerned about your followers, they're just following you because of the brand rather than actually what you can offer them. I think that goes back to some of the stuff we were talking about earlier, where you have to look at sort of what are you offering the customers on the platform. So it goes back to having a bit of tone of personality on the platform that give people a reason, give your local customers a bit of a reason to follow you. So that can be a mixture of sort of actually, what's really popular on the platform is little hints and tips and things like this. So this could just be top 5 tips. This could be little quirky things that's going on in the local community. This could be offers and sales. People on Twitter really like an offer. So if you've ever got an offer, it's a great time to put it out. And I think when you begin to do more, you're offering people a bit of a reason to follow you beyond just the sort of the brand association. Because ultimately, if you think about Twitter, it's a big place with 330 million people, and you need to make sure that you're actually giving people something that they actually want to consume on their timeline.
Anybody else? We've probably got time for a couple more questions if there's... Okay, I wanted to ask, how important is the number of people who follow you these days?
From as an individual user, or from like a brand sort of perspective?
From a brand perspective.
Yeah, it's... I certainly don't see it as the be-all and the end, the key metric on Twitter anymore. I think most of the big brands now have substantial followings on the platform, so it's almost like that job's already sort of been done for them. And I think now it's more about, right, you've got this big following. What are you actually giving them? How are you actually using Twitter to make their experience a bit better? So I don't see it as perhaps a big an issue as perhaps it was sort of 5 or 6 years ago when we were still in our infancy and we were still growing. You look at Ford, BMW, Jag, they've all got millions of followers. And even if you're a smaller brand with perhaps tens of thousands of followers, that's still okay. You don't need to be playing in those levels. It's more about the quality of the people following you rather than the pure numbers.
And when it comes to the key way that businesses should be measuring how successful their brand is on Twitter, what would you advise?
I think that there isn't a catch-all answer for that, really. Certainly, I think the customer service part of Twitter, I think, is extremely relevant and is a big part of this metric. So making sure that you're responding to users, making sure they're having a good experience on Twitter, making sure that you're not just feeling like there's no one at the end of sort of the Twitter handle, so to speak. We have, you know, for bigger branding campaigns, we have a whole range of metrics that we measure, from engagements to retweets to likes and stuff like that. So we have a lot of measurement. But I think ultimately it depends on your campaign objective and what you're trying to get out. Is this an opportunity to drive sales? Are you using this as an opportunity to get more followers? You know, so there's different uses of the platform with different objectives.
Cool, thank you. Any last questions before we close? Cool. Well, thank you for joining us, Ross. That was really interesting. Next up, we're going to be hosting a session that we've wanted to host for years. We're going to have Auto Trader, Motors.co.uk, and Car Gurus all on stage together talking about online classified sites. Please join us in 10 minutes. Thank you.